Good evening, everyone. My name is Sona Wadasani. I am an admissions officer at Duke University. I'm also a university alum. I graduated in the class of 2014.
Good evening. My name is Brand Dawson. I'm the Director of Undergraduate Admission at Boston College.
I'm Nelson Mendoza. I'm admission counselor at Rice University.
Hi everyone, my name is Jackie Marthouse. I'm Assistant Director at Northwestern University.
My name is Maria Elena Ornelas, and I represent Vanderbilt University.
Good evening. I'm Global Historian. I'm an associate professor of public pharmacy at the University of Houston.
Thank you. We have been working with the counseling department to put together some questions for this panel for you tonight. I wanted to let you know that each question will be projected on our screens that are above me on either side. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to our wonderful principal, Mr. Mark Brazil, who's going to be our moderator for the evening.
Thanks, Ms. Mohi. I appreciate that. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here tonight. A tremendous crowd. And obviously, there's a great interest in the college admissions process. And we're pleased that we could offer this opportunity for you tonight to get some information from some of these schools. So without any further ado, I suggest we get started right away. The first question will go to the University of Houston. And can you briefly describe how you determine which students will be accepted into your university, and what does that process look like?
Okay, so at University of Houston, we have kind of two major admission levels. One is actually the overall university admissions, and then there are different colleges have different criteria. So in the university applications, the top 10 rule, you know, all the top 10s get the automatic admission, and there are, after that, there are different levels depending on your SAT score. And also there are like individual application evaluation procedure in each different college. For example, I'm in College of Pharmacy. We have a kind of a different evaluation process where we look at all the applications, not only for your scores, but all the other things you have done, the community service, other extracurricular activities, what kind of the fine art programs you have participated, all those things. And then it goes through an interview process, and then finally we select. That's actually College of Pharmacy, and different colleges have different levels and different approaches.
I would just add, Vanderbilt University is a private institution. We are also out of state, and so we use a holistic admissions process and not necessarily any top 10% rule per se, or any minimum GPA, minimum test score requirement. So our director likes to say that he prefers to see students that are firing on all 5 cylinders, going through the students' transcripts to see that they've challenged themselves, and I think the key there is a healthy challenge, that they do have strong standardized test scores. But again, we're also starting to see more students get involved in their communities and bring that level of engagement and leadership that we see in their extracurricular resumes, their personal statements, as well as their recommendation letters with them to our campus. And so our students tend to be very balanced in those different facets of the application.
Maria does a great job of explaining what Northwestern University also does. So we practice holistic admissions as well. And I want to echo what Maria said, that every facet is important, and we do look for students who are well-rounded across the entire application.
Very safe for Rice University, actually.
Again, similar at Boston College, I would add the only thing, and I imagine most of our schools do this as well, is that we read applications geographically on our staff. So my colleague Owen Grover has the Houston area. So he gets to know the schools in this region and understands the expectations at these schools, understands their ability to engage in their communities in a different way perhaps than a student from New Jersey might, or a student from Bangalore, India, wherever it might be around the world where our students are applying from. We really approach the process with context. And so it really is not a system that allows us to set minimum GPA requirements or minimum curricular requirements, because these vary so widely in so many different places. So trust that we understand the schools that we're working with. And the schools here in Katy ISD all provide us a rich background of the available opportunities here to give us that context when we're reading.
I would say the same thing for Duke. We also do lead geographically at the university. I'm actually the admissions officer for the greater Houston area, and I'm very familiar with the high schools here. I do my visits. I become familiar with what curriculum is available at that specific high school. So I do like to remind Houstonians that, you know, if your high school has APs, we're not going to compare you against a high school that has the IB diploma. Your school counselors do a very good job of providing a school report about what is available to you at your specific high school or in your specific district. And so we read within that context, right? We're not going to compare a student who has AP classes to a student who doesn't even have the option of taking AP classes, because we know that the biggest predictor of where students go to college and, you know, where they go to high school is based off zip code, which really is not their decision, but a parent's decision.
Thank you. On to our next question. We'll start with Vanderbilt. What strengths might you see in the application of a student who has participated in band, choir, orchestra, theater, dance, or arts for 4 years in high school? And why might these students be more attractive to universities than students who focus solely on academics?
So, I think for most of our
And we are looking for them to, again, be engaged in their current communities. And we were having some lovely conversations at the tables just outside, but whether it's their school community or their hometown community, we want to see that engagement. Especially within the fine arts organizations, we know that a lot of things will go into play for a student to be able to be involved in those organizations, things like organization skills, time management skills, and a lot of that can play out into a student's success in the college environment once they get to our campuses. A lot of us actually on our staff were former band members, orchestra members, and fine arts group members before we actually came into the admissions profession. And so we actually understand the time commitment that it takes, the level of energy, and being able to see that reflected both, again, within the high school application process, but also, again, once our students get to campus and are available to become involved with our School of Music on our campus, within any of our other fine arts majors on our campus. And so we do hope to see that student continue that level of engagement with their fine arts groups, again, once they get to our college campus.
I can add to that as well. So we actually have a really strong arts undercurrent at Duke. We just opened a brand new arts center completely dedicated to the arts. So even if you don't plan to major in the arts, we have over 500 clubs and organizations on our campus. Many of us here have dozens and hundreds of clubs and organizations. We need people to participate in them. We need people to contribute to our own orchestras and our own artistic clubs and our own bands and choirs. So for us, we want to admit people who are going to frankly participate in them and do well. So we're going to look to the classes. A lot of us allow artistic supplements in our process, so you can submit them. A lot of us do partner with Slide Room or through our own application portals where you can submit a piece of you performing, and we will take that into consideration in our application process. So again, you have to understand that, you know, a university is not, none of the universities here today just want to admit students who are going to spend 24/7 in the library. We want to admit students who are going to thrive on our campuses and be an active part of the community. And the way that we determine that is to see if you've been an active part in your high school community. And the arts are a great way to be involved at your high school.
Okay, let's go with Northwestern to start this question. Many parents come to high school and are concerned about the time commitment in fine arts and how that will affect academics. In your opinion, is a student who has participated in extracurricular arts activities, such as band, choir, theater, orchestra, dance, etc., are they ever at a disadvantage in applying to college because of that participation?
Sure. So short answer is no. As far as when we're looking at applicants, when we're looking at applications, we want students who are involved in things like fine arts. And as Maria said, we know that time commitment, right? A lot of us in our offices did this in high school. So when we're looking at this application and whether or not this is a factor in terms of your academics, right? Is it affecting maybe the number of AP classes you've taken? That's not something we're assessing. We're assessing the time commitment there, what that means. It shows that you're a well-rounded student. It shows you've been involved in something outside of just academics. We value that. All of us do. And so when you're applying to college, I would say it's almost an advantage. It shows that you've been involved in something else again, and it shows that you are able to balance more than just academics. You have more than one kind of thing. Again, the short answer is no. I definitely think it's important and valuable in the admissions process.
I can add to that. On the application, whether you're using the Common App or Quest for a Job or some other application, usually it asks you how many hours you're spending on an activity, and then what years of high school did you do it, and then we're doing it like several weeks a year. And so you can give us a sense of what the time commitment was yourself. Feedback.
I received a question from one of you out in the lobby before this session, and it wasn't a bad question, so please don't think that I'm suggesting that. But it was a question that made me a little sad, because the question was, will I be at a disadvantage for following my passion in the arts, because doing so might bring my GPA down a little bit, because that course might not be weighted in a way that another course was. And for me, I took a moment and I kind of just said, what are we doing, right, if that's a message that you're hearing from each other or elsewhere. If you plan your life based on what you think I want to see in your college application, that's not going to be a very fulfilling life, right? And so I think as a parent myself, I have 3 daughters, and I want them to follow their passions, to be focused on the development of themselves as a whole person and not just as an academic scholar. All of that's important, and you're hearing about how we value these things at our institutions. But think about the goal, the outcome that you want for yourself at the end of this process, once college is done. If you're living your life constantly worrying about what other people will think about it, you're not going to lead yourself to happiness. So I ask you to keep that perspective in mind as you're making these choices. If you love to participate in the arts, if you love dribbling basketball, if you love writing for your newspaper, whatever it is that you like to do, follow that, because you'll be more successful in your academics as a result of having that balance in your life.
Actually, I can also add to that. So I am actually a researcher, so I always look for new things. So, but this is very well established fact that you do fine arts and the other things that really helps the academic stuff. So we kind of try to separate the academic area and then the fine arts or other things separately, but don't look at them separately. I mean, if you look, for example, I know how much you are working hard for your homeworks and every day, and if there's a machine, if it goes continuously, at one point it will break down, right? So if you do your fine arts and all other things, and that will help to get a break and then go back to the studies. And also, it really, I mean, this is a documented fact. The music and different other fine art forms directly help you in your academics. Not only in psychological side, anatomically, the neurological, all these things have been very well studied and they have been shown. So, if you try to drop a fine arts program, expecting increasing your GPA, that's not a wise decision.
Rice University will start this one. The universities value student applications that show sudden involvement in several clubs or organizations in their last year of high school.
We do prefer, right, that you kind of had sustained engagement with an activity, and then we also consider if you had leadership within that activity, and there's way of showing leadership in probably every activity that I've seen so far. And then something else we value is what is the impact of your activity on your community, on your school community, or your neighborhood, or your family, or your friends. So we prefer sustained engagement, and those that have shown some leadership, and those that have had some sort of impact on their surroundings.
Boston College, following up a little bit on what we've already talked about. Many times we see students that are in band orchestra since 6th grade, and as they approach their junior and senior year in high school, some students or parents feel the need to enroll in extra AP classes and drop their elective that they have been committed to for several years because they believe that the extra AP class will help them achieve their dream of attending a specific university. Do you think that adding an extra AP class outshines commitment to an activity over 4 years in high school? And would it be suspicious if a student suddenly drops an elective that they have been committed to for several years?
I don't think it would be suspicious, but it would be disheartening if there was a student that was really excited over the course of time. I mentioned I have 3 daughters. My oldest is a freshman in high school right now, and she is a competitive dancer. She dances 20 hours a week. It leaves her little time to do anything else. She's involved in cheer and a couple of other smaller things, but that is what she absolutely loves to do. And we made a decision with her a little bit earlier when she got to middle school that she needed to begin to focus either on dance or in some school activities because she couldn't manage both with the time commitment it required. And that's what she chose, and we left that to her to choose. I have a 7th grader, and she was a competitive dancer up until this summer. They went to nationals, she did great, and she decided to focus on other areas within her school. So the answer to the question is, if you've got a passion and you're excited about it and you're developing in it and it sustains you, I think there's more value in that than just adding another AP course. And I think it makes you a more attractive candidate to us that you have depth beyond academics. We heard a little bit earlier about, all of our schools have clubs and organizations. I brought tangible evidence of that today, and I left it on my table, which was our arts calendars. This is just the fall semester of all the programs that are offered at Boston College around just the arts, which is a fraction of the clubs and organizations offered at our university. Part of the university experience is developing yourself culturally, developing yourself in your own skill set outside of the classroom as well. And we are looking for more than just academic students. In fact, those that are solely focused on academics, I would argue, are less desirable than those that have depth to their experience.
I can add to that a little bit. So, one AP class is never going to be the reason that we admit or deny ever. We are looking for students who've taken the most rigorous courses available to them. We rely, actually, I had a question earlier on how would we know that? We rely on your counselors to tell us that, right? So whatever your counselor says is the most rigorous available to you, we believe that. None of us, if you have 25 of the AP classes available to you, are going to expect you to take all 25. That is overkill. We have all been high school students. We know, we remember, some of us have kids. And so we're never going to expect that. We are going to expect that you take a couple, that you've shown that you challenge yourself, but if the decision came down to being an orchestra or band and taking that over AP Earth and Ocean Science or AP Environmental Science, and you've been doing band since 5th grade, take band. Be involved in something that you're passionate about so that when you go home at the end of the day, you're happy and you're not spending an additional 4 hours every night studying for a class that you don't even care about. That will never be the decision a student gets in over another student, ever. I promise you. We look at so much more than just the number of AP classes you're taking and your test scores.
Actually, I can also add in the College of Pharmacy, we actually produce in pharmacists. And so like I said, in the initial application evaluation, we look for starting from scores to all the other things. But after that, we call students for an interview. And beyond that point, we don't even talk about GPA or nothing. It's all about how you prepare for the program to become a pharmacist. It's not about the knowledge about the subject, but how you handle the stress, how you handle customers, how you handle the doctors, nurses, all the different things. You have to learn all those things, and you cannot do that in a year or two. So we look for students who has that background, that capability, that ability. So how do we measure? Not just by reading, okay, I did this 1 year, I did this year, no. If you have consistently do certain things, like find a program, sports, or community service, or something, continuously, we know this student is really into that, and he or she has that capability. So it's very important to continue those if you have that going on with you.
One elephant in the room is the top 10% in class rank. What influence does the top 10% rule or even the top 6% rule in some cases have on admissions to your university? And how do extracurricular activities impact or affect the 10% status?
So that's a great question. None of the universities up here are University of Texas system schools, except for maybe U of H, they are. So none of us have anything like the 10% rule or the top 6% rule where we guarantee admission if you are in this percentage of your class. We are all going to pay attention to whether or not you're doing well academically. Frankly speaking, college admissions has gotten competitive to that point where most of us are going to be looking for the best students at the high school or students who are doing very well academically, but ranking really doesn't, I know that like at Duke specifically, I can say that we had more students this past year who did not report rank than students of those who applied than students who did report rank. I know that ranking is very big here in the state of Texas because of how the University of Texas does things. But many of us, you can't compare a student from Texas to a student in Michigan when Michigan isn't doing rank anymore, or that's just an example. In terms of extracurricular activities, how does that affect the top 10% status? Again, we want to admit students who are well-rounded, who are going to contribute to our communities. We have tons of things that we offer on our campuses, from study abroad to clubs and organizations to community service opportunities, and we need people who are going to be engaged in them. And the best way for us as admissions officers to assess whether or not you're going to be engaged on our campuses is to see how engaged you were in high school. It's just sort of a logical conclusion that we draw. I mean, our assumption, and we can argue about the merits of that, but our assumption is that if you were involved in high school, you're going to be involved in college. That's just how we look at things. We only have 30-ish papers in front of us. We have the entire application, and we believe what you tell us. We believe what your counselors and teachers say to us. And so again, whatever you're doing in high school, as long as you're passionate about it, you have some sustained leadership in it, our expectation is that you'll probably continue that passion with you in college, and that's what we want. We want you to bring those special passions, whatever you care about, to our community, so that we do also have a diverse and enriched community where students from all backgrounds and all interests can learn from each other. Because that's what we think sort of makes college at our university special, is that you will be interacting with students from all states, from all backgrounds, from all passions, and all interests.
Katy ISD has many academically competitive schools. At many campuses, including Tompkins, a 3.0 GPA could place you in the bottom half, or maybe the bottom quartile. And how do universities view students who are strong students but come from highly competitive schools? And does participation in fine arts assist with these applications?
Exactly. I think I gave part of the answer before, but there are several things I would like to say. Specifically, UFH actually understand the differences between different school ISDs, and we pay specific attention for that. That's number one. And then the number two is, as I mentioned, different colleges look for different things. Now, exactly like in our college, I can speak for that because I'm involved in the admission. So we really look from the very beginning of the holistic type of approach. So it's very important for you to do all the other things to get into the competition.
I think I mentioned a little bit earlier, and maybe I can elaborate a little bit more, but every school that we evaluate applications from will provide us what's known as a school profile. And on that profile, it tells us a lot about the district. It tells us a lot about the curriculum that's offered in the school. It tells us about the average test scores of a region. It tells us possibly where last year's graduating seniors went off to college. So it gives us an exceptional amount of context. And then within that, is this notion of particular schools might be stronger than others. And you can't change the school that you're in. Some of you may have chosen to live in a specific region because of the strength of the school. But once you're in that school, all you can do is make the most of that. And I think you need to have trust in us as staff that we're spending the time to get to know your regions quite well. And that, as Sanam mentioned earlier, we're not expecting you to take courses that aren't offered at your school, and we're not expecting you to take all the courses offered at your school, right? And so in life, there are choices that we make, and there are areas where we choose to spend our time, and I think this is a process that mirrors that. That there are some students that are particularly gifted or gravitate toward STEM fields, and others that might gravitate toward the humanities. Focus on those areas that you enjoy and maybe bring those to the highest level that you can. But don't worry so much about your grading scale here versus the grading scale down the road or down in Fort Worth or wherever, up in Fort Worth rather, wherever it might be that your other applicants are applying from. We will do that work, that homework ahead of time to evaluate you in a fair light.
We'll shift a little bit away from the admissions process to more of like a course of study. Vanderbilt, there are many students who are passionate about more than one field of study. For example, we have many talented musicians who may not want to pursue music as their primary career, but who love to learn and perform regularly. What kind of opportunities does your school offer for these students to pursue higher education in two seemingly unrelated fields of study like science and music, double majors, major minor, dual degrees, etc.?
Sure, and I think this might apply to some of the other colleges that are represented here tonight, in that we do have a fabulous school of music that's conservatory quality music education, but it's not a conservatory in that it does allow students to double major outside of the School of Music. Likewise, we invite non-music majors to come in and take advantage of the classes, the faculty members, and the various ensembles that we have available on our campus as well. Likewise, we also have a very active fine arts department and theater department. So we welcome double majors on many of our various campuses. A quick fact about Vanderbilt, we have about 65% of our students that will double major at some point. We also have another 40% that will have at least one minor. Pre-professional tracks are not attached to one school or another, so it's not uncommon to see our music majors that eventually go off to medical school or law school or many other graduate professional schools as well. So yes, we welcome students to follow, again, I hate to keep saying the same word, but that's really what it is. It's finding your passion, or for my students that aren't quite sure what that passion is, being involved in these various organizations and these various majors when you do get to a college campus, we sometimes help you navigate what that passion might actually be. Sometimes you like one aspect of theater, but maybe not all the aspects of theater. And so being able to hone your craft in that particular aspect, that can also lead you down the road to a creative writing major, or maybe a journalism major. Or sometimes you're able to kind of branch out into one of our wonderful fine arts groups that's more extracurricular in nature than an actual academic pathway. So I think a lot of our campuses have realized that versatility of our students in being able to follow a wide variety of different pathways.
Yeah, just to add to what Maria has already said, Northwestern offers the same opportunity to double major, do a dual degree program across seemingly very different passions and interests. And so to add to that as well, we have over 500 student groups, just like we mentioned, there's a lot of student groups. We have over 80 theater productions a year that are student run. There are not enough student theater majors to run those productions. So we need students who are involved, even outside academically, to be a part of these productions, to be a part of our orchestra and ensembles across all fine arts. And so we value students who are interested in more than one thing, and we enhance it and encourage it at Northwestern and at every school, I think, at this table.
Yeah, I would say that's sort of what makes us special, right? Like, we, many of our schools may have specific schools, but we have all, and our faculty have worked together to create curriculums that are curated for students who have multiple interests, right? You're 17 years old, you might change your mind. It's okay to be passionate about biomedical engineering and visual and media studies. It's very possible that you may have more than one interest, and so all of our universities have specifically created curriculums so that you can take advantage of that. I think it's just important to understand that, like, we do want you to connect these disciplines. We strongly believe at Duke, and I'm sure it's true for the other schools here, that disciplines don't exist in their own bubbles, right? Computer science, especially, is now impacting every single field. Music, it works together with our computer science department, and they do programming research together. And so we do want you to feel free to take advantage of those specific offerings that we have, and really just be happy. We don't want you to come to our university to feel like you're siloed into a specific school or to come to in a specific major and really just hate your 4 years in our colleges. So we have created specific experiences just for you to enjoy yourselves and really feel like you're exploring all of your interests, not just one or two.
Yeah, we also have all those things, the double major, major minor, but one interesting program is actually called triple minor. It's considered as a one major. So you can do several different interested areas and consider it as a one major. You really want to do. So there are a lot of options.
All right, in some families, the student may be preparing to be the first of his or her family to attend college. Are universities seeking out these students? How do your universities find these students? What are some of the activities that they may pursue during their high school education that might help you find them, and what challenges might they face or when they arrive on your campus?
Sure, so we're definitely seeking out these students. Universities want students who are the first to attend their college simply because we want you to have this opportunity too. So at Northwestern, there's several ways that we engage personally to find these students. We're part of several community-based organizations. We interact with them, we go present to them. A lot of these community-based organizations center around first-generation students. We're also part of the I'm First program. We partner with programs like Bridge, OTHS, National Hispanic Institute. All of these buckets have students who are first-gen in these application programs. At Northwestern specifically, our student body is 11.5% first generation in the upcoming class in 2022. And it's something that we're committed to. We want students from these backgrounds, from all backgrounds. And so for what you can do in high school, join some of these organizations I've listed off, look into your community-based organizations, and just reach out if you have questions. That's what we're here for. All of us are here to answer your questions, especially there's a lot of anxiety about being the first person to apply to college. And maybe your parents or your guardians don't have the answers. So talk to your counselors, talk to us, get the answers that you may need. And then once you're on campus, there will be unique challenges for that, I'm not gonna lie. But at least I'd say at all our universities, we have systems and things in place to help you out with that. At Northwestern, we have a Student Enrichment Services office that has a whole department committed to our first generation students. And they have programming, they offer summer transition programs. There's something called Art Scholars. Look into that if you're admitted and you're senior. It is a free, no-cost program to get you some college credit right before you start, and just get a home base, get a touch point before you get to college for the first time. And so that doesn't end in that summer. That office is available your entire 4 years, and we want these students to be just as successful as students who have had the opportunities and the knowledge about college beforehand.
It's very similar at Duke. So I'm actually a first-generation college student. I'm from the Virgin Islands originally, but the first in my family to go to college, neither of my parents. My mom didn't even have a high school degree. So definitely going to Duke was a transition for me personally. Very similar to Northwestern, and I imagine Rice and BC and the University of Houston and Vanderbilt. We do have support systems on our campus. We have an Office of Access and Outreach completely dedicated to you. We have a brand fairly new scholarship program for first-generation college students that will give you the full cost of tuition fees, room and board, plus about $5,000 per year because you still need to live and pay for personal stuff, travel to and from Houston twice a year. And it's very similar. Again, we have partners. We are an Emerge partner, which is a huge CBO here in Houston. And so we are very committed to making sure that these students are on our campus. We were about 15% students, our first generation and their families are Pell eligible in the class of 2022 at Duke. And so we do work really hard to recruit students from a wide variety of backgrounds. Because again, we strongly believe that students from different backgrounds will contribute to our campus in interesting and unique ways. And we think their contributions are just as valuable as anyone else's.
At Boston College, similar to what you're hearing, a number of different resources for first-generation students. We have a program called Options Through Education, which identifies 40 first-generation or low-income students each year that have really achieved extraordinary success. And I think earning admission to any one of our institutions it isn't easy, right? And to do so in an environment where you haven't had parents that have navigated this process themselves is even that much harder. And so it really allows these students to make sure that they have the continued support throughout their 4 years at BC. We have a program known as Learning to Learn that really works with our first-generation students around the application process to graduate school. So getting into undergraduate institutions is difficult enough. If your parents haven't navigated that process, they certainly haven't navigated the graduate school process. And so we have a whole academic support program that really is geared toward focusing on those goals for particular students. We have a program particularly for low-income students known as Montserrat, and it's a program that identifies some of the additional non-billed expenses that come up over the course of a student's time. We have a book share program where we have 1,500 students that have a library where they can go and pick up their books and not have to worry about buying them at the bookstore. It's a loan program. They return them like a library at the end of the semester. Available funding for students that might be coming from Houston and don't have a Northeast winter coat. Right? Your winter coat gear won't work in the Northeast. It'll work in the spring. But you know, those types of resources you might not be thinking about when you're a first-generation student or a low-income first-generation student heading off to a place that is unknown. So we have those types of support systems built in to make sure that none of our students are left out in the cold of that.
So something else that I'll add is about challenges that you might face when you're on campus. You might have something that is called like Impostor Syndrome. That's kind of, you know, a word you might hear thrown around. And what it kind of means is, you know, if you're a first generation college student, you're going to be in a classroom in a debate and discussion, and you're going to think, you might think, oh, my parents didn't go to college, or my peers' parents went to college, therefore, maybe they're smarter than me, or maybe my opinion is not as great as theirs is. But now I can tell you from the admissions side that it's really hard to get into all of our colleges here, and you go through so many layers of review that it's really hard to get in. And so if you are selected to go to one of these colleges, you are a very incredible person. And a lot of people have confirmed it throughout the admission process. So you definitely are just as smart as those other students.
Okay, we'll stay right with Bryce, right here. As students are planning their future field of study and where they want to attend a university, could you give some advice about how to narrow down what major or majors they want to pursue, how to find scholarships, financial aid, and how to get the information they need from your university to make sure it is the right one for them?
All right, so there are a lot of questions in here. I hope you guys can help me out. So as for narrowing down what major or majors you want to pursue, at Rice, and I'm sure at a lot of other similar schools, you actually have 2 years to decide your major in college. So you don't declare your major until the end of your sophomore year. And at Rice, we actually have distribution requirements, and a lot of schools have similar requirements, where you're required to take 3 classes in the School of Humanities, 3 classes in the School of Social Sciences, etc. So we're kind of requiring you to explore before you decide your major at the end of your sophomore year. And then as for when you're in high school and you want to kind of narrow down your majors, I would recommend using your maybe time during the summer or your time outside the classroom to figure out what major you want to pursue. I think during the summer is a good time to kind of think, reflect on what activities you like to do and reflect on how those activities might connect to a major in college. As for finding scholarships and financial aid, there are website like databases of scholarships that you can Google and look through those. I like to tell people that if there's a scholarship that's worth $3,000, let's say, or let's say it's worth $1,000, and you spent 3 hours working on the application for the scholarship and you win it, then that means you made about $333 per hour. Very few jobs will pay you that much. And so definitely think of applying scholarships in that way. And then maybe I'll pass on the last one to someone else, because I'm talking about.
Yeah, I can expand a little bit on the second and third question. So I used to be a former counselor before I started working for admissions, so I spent a lot of time on the other side. In terms of financial aid, I do want to highlight that 5 of the 6 universities up here do meet 100% of demonstrated financial need. So what that means is there are roughly 60 schools across the country that meet your financial need regardless of where you are on the economic spectrum. So essentially based off your FAFSA and CSS profile, the one that your parents submit on your behalf or you might submit it with them to our financial aid offices, our financial aid offices come up with what's known as an expected family contribution. So they come up with a number that we think that your family can reasonably afford to pay based off your income, your assets, your specific situation, you know, if you have multiple kids in college at one time, et cetera, et cetera. There is someone in our financial aid offices who is reading your financial aid applications, just like there's someone on the admissions side reading your applications. And so whatever your family cannot afford to pay, with the, you know, whatever we determine your expected family contribution to be, let's say it's $10,000 per year, our universities will give you the balance, usually in the form of grant aid, so money that does not have to be repaid back. I think some of us have loans, some of us may not have loans, and if we do have loans, we probably cap our loans at a certain amount every single year. So that's something to keep in mind, is there are 60 schools across the country that have very generous financial aid. It's mostly schools with an endowment above $1 billion, which 5 of the 6 of us have here. So that's the first thing about financial aid. In terms of scholarships, as a former college counselor, exactly what Bryce said, you know, there were so many $1,000 scholarships that local organizations offered, the local Rotary offered, you know, just women's clubs in the area. And so many of my students, like, I would beg them to apply because I only had 1 or 2 students apply, and I'm like, why aren't the rest of you applying? And it's because they just don't want to write another essay. And again, it's an hour of your time, and if you're strategic and smart enough, you could probably recycle an essay you've already written. These, you really can. These scholarships, I used to make a list of 40 that was offered in the county alone, just to county students. Whereas with admissions, you know, you might be competing against the entire world. With your local scholarships, you're just competing against your high school or the county, and the competition is much, much slimmer when only one person is applying. You're going to get the scholarship. So that's just something to keep in mind with scholarships and financial aid. The second half of that question is, how do you get the information from our universities? We all have very expansive websites. Please visit the admissions websites and read through them. I guarantee 90% of your questions can be found on our websites. A lot of us have virtual tours at this point that you can use to explore our universities. You can, of course, we encourage you and welcome you to come visit campus. Most of us do read by regions, and so you have a regional point person in our office who's there to answer questions for you. Email us, call us. We will get back to you as soon as we can. We do travel a lot, so please bear with us. But there is someone there to help you and answer your questions. You know, and then of course your counselors. Oh my God, your counselors are wonderful resources. They know so much about this process. They've seen dozens and dozens of students every year go through it. Hundreds of students go through it every single year, so please feel free to use them. And if they don't know the answer, guess what? They can pick up the phone and call us too. So please recognize that this process is not you siloed alone in your home. There are support systems out there to help you.
And utilize the resources that our universities provide in terms of social media, for example. Follow our Twitter accounts, right? Follow our Facebook pages, and just follow the feeds. Just see what's posted. Follow our dining Instagram account. See the food, right? That's an important part of the process. You can't quite taste it on Instagram, but you can at least see it. You know, you have so many resources that weren't available 10, 20, 30 years ago when students were going through this process. So you have every opportunity, I think, to learn as much as you can. If you work with your school, they might know alums from your high school that are at the institutions on your list. And they can provide their contact information and ask them, you know, straight up, you know, what was it like coming from Tompkins to Duke or whatever it might be? What was the transition like? And how did you navigate that? And what do you love about it? What are some of the things maybe that you want to improve? Those are all questions that, you know, might have an extra level of validity coming from a peer of yours. We have a student admission program, I kid you not, with 1,000 student volunteers that run our tours, our information sessions, but they also have an office, and they answer the phone and they'll answer email. So if you don't know a student at DC or Duke or any of our schools, you can call and just talk to a real student and ask them questions about that experience. So there are a lot of ways that you can learn about the culture, and some of it will take a little bit of work on your part, but if you're really committed to making a good choice, you'll be willing to put in that effort.
Okay. Stay right there with Boston College. For our younger students in the audience, what advice would you give an 8th grade parent when planning a high school schedule that would make their student more attractive for university?
So I mentioned I have a freshman, so I'll give you the advice I gave myself a year ago. I think one of the beauties of American higher education is that we really value a liberal arts approach to education. I've had the good fortune, I traveled to 42 countries, meeting with students that have been interested in the various institutions that I've represented. And in most parts of the world, educations are tracked, right? Coming out of high school or secondary school, going to university, you're choosing an engineering track or a physician's track or a business track. And U.S. higher education gives you that flexibility to take time to reflect on the things that are important to you, to think about the impact you want to make on the world. And so the advice I gave my daughter was to make sure that her curriculum was diversified. We all offer a liberal arts curriculum, a set of required courses, whether it's a core curriculum or Gen Ed, whatever the institution calls it. But it's a series of courses that you'll have to take at our institutions. And there are courses in the natural sciences, the social sciences, the humanities, with the idea that it's important to explore, and similar to what Sona mentioned about the world's problems, there are no problems that you will encounter that can be solved from a singular discipline. Right? You have to understand, if you're thinking about the environment or population growth or poverty, right? All of these things need solutions that think about the political aspect, the environmental aspect, the socioeconomic aspect of these issues. And so at its core, liberal arts education will give you that platform to think about those problems. But you also, at the age of 13, don't know what your future holds. I hope you don't, right? The world will be very different when you're our age than it is right now. And so you have to be thinking about your educational environment in a way that gives you options. And so my challenge to my daughter was to make sure that she had a curriculum in place that would allow her to take honors and AP courses in any of those disciplines. I'm not expecting her to take 5 APs in her senior year. I won't allow her to take 5 AP courses in her senior year. I don't think it's healthy for every student to do that, right? And so, but I want to make sure that when she figures it out, if it's math and science where she's leaning right now, she's thinking she might want to be a nurse. At 13, at 14, how does she know, right? She's going to have to figure that out. But she'll be in a curriculum that will allow her to take those courses if that's what she chooses. If she takes a history course and all of a sudden falls in love with history, I want her to be ready to be able to tackle that at an AP level. But again, I'm not expecting her to do it across the board. And that approach, I think, will also set her up well for all 6 of our institutions and many others out there, because it will have introduced them to that liberal arts environment that we'll be expecting of them when they arrive on our campus.
I can also like to add a little bit to the same thing. I mean, it's really nice description. And so at that level, in the 8th grade, I mean, try to find yourself. I mean, when you come to the high school, if you have an idea, okay, kind of, okay, I'm going to this area or that area, that also helps. And then selecting coursework, and exactly like he mentioned, don't go for all the APs, all the PAPs, and do whatever the amount that you can manage, and also have the balance with fine art programs or other things.
That will lead us to our final question for the evening, and we'll start with Duke University. As teachers in Katy ISD, we mentor and encourage our students to create a balance in their schedule. Our goal today is to show students and parents that AP everything is not necessarily the best path for getting into their university of choice. Instead, students should focus on developing their strengths and being dedicated to things they are passionate about. Any final comments you'd like to make on that statement?
Yeah, so the first thing I will say is that so AP is considered rigorous in many of our admissions processes, but actually many of us also limit the number of AP credits that we accept. we will take a certain amount, but we do also want you to engage in our curriculum. You know, you're paying X amount of money for a Duke education, a Vanderbilt, Boston College, you know, Rice education. So we want to make sure that the bulk of your curriculum is going to be courses at our university. So I think it's also, you know, as a former counselor, I used to always tell parents, what is the goal for you? Like, you need to sort of decide around junior year, like, do you want your child to be able to go to a school where they will get 20 credits for their 20 AP classes, and if they took that, then oh my God. But if they did that, then our schools are probably not going to be the best fit for you because we do usually limit the number of AP classes we take. So that's sort of one thing to keep in mind. The second, again, is I ask you to think like admissions officers, right? If you will, I mean, I know that it's hard because you're biased, you see how hard your children work day in, day out. But put yourself in our shoes for a second. If your job was to admit the students who you think would contribute best to the university, who would do well academically, but also take part, you know, we have demands from other university partners, like our orchestra professors, our music professors need musicians in their classes. Our basketball team is telling us to admit basketball players. So I ask you to think like an admissions officer for a second. Who would you admit? Would you admit the student who was taking 8 AP classes but was a superb violinist in the state of Texas? Or would you admit the student who had taken 20 AP classes but didn't do a single thing outside of the classroom? I ask you to sort of think like us because these are the conversations that we are having in our office with the other staff, is thinking about who's going to contribute to our campus, who's going to be a great roommate, right? Is it going to be fun to be friends with this person? Are you going to ask our professors engaging questions? We're trying to build a community, and so that's why the important parts of the application process, the individual parts are really important to us, and why we don't just admit based off GPA and test scores. We do have that holistic review process because we are asking ourselves these questions when reading your student's application.
I would just also add the fact that, and I think we've all had wonderful comments here tonight as well, but I think it's okay to admit that you're not comfortable stretching yourself to an 8, 12, 20 AP course load as well. I think it's okay to accept the fact that you're not balanced in both the maths and sciences as you are in the humanities. And the sooner that our students are able to have that conversation with their parents, with their counselor, then the better equipped they are when they do get to a college campus, they do overwhelm themselves and they can immediately say, okay, I'm not in a good comfort zone. I need to go ahead and rearrange my schedule or figure out exactly where my best fit is on my college campus. Often we see that students don't have that skill to be able to assess that for themselves, and they get themselves in too deep, and then all of a sudden we are seeing students, you know, have W's all over their transcript, or students that don't know exactly where their pathway is because they've done something that has been told to them that they need to do.
Yeah, so it's very important to have a balanced life. So have not only the academic side moving forward, develop the other skills which also have the academic side. And also we have some interesting facts. I told you, like the UFH has different layers of admissions. In overall admission process, we have that top 10% and it's only the numbers related admission, but we have the admissions with the holistic process as well. The fact says the students who have been admitted through the holistic process have a 100% retention rate. So that means they are really ready to move forward with the college atmosphere, and so pressure, and they are ready to move forward. So have a balanced life. AP is not the only thing that you can take to the top level.
Okay, before I bring up our lead counselor, Mona Clark, I'd like to thank our panel for being here tonight and answering these questions.